the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Is this thing on, John? Do you hear me?
I'm feeling fresh as a pod this morning.
It's been a whole week. Okay, John, we've got some technical issues here, and when don't we? First off, let me do this so I'm perfectly legal. KSLQ-FM, Washington. John, how was your week off? Did you go anywhere? Tell us about your spring break.
Oh, you're one of the last people on earth I'd talk to about if I went anywhere, or if I didn't go anywhere, or what I did, Brad. But it was a magical week of not doing this radio show. Of course, I did johncombest.com every morning, as I've done for, a few years now. But yeah, it was great to have a little bit of a break, particularly in the morning, Brad. It was wonderful.
Well, John,
thank you for asking.
John,
how was your Monday show last week with Chelsea Rodriguez? Was phenomenal.
Well, first off, let me do this. Okay, I know you went out of town, and every morning last week I said, "Hey, John Combest is out of town, so if you burglars want to come by and steal anything out of his house, you're more than welcome to." Did anybody break into your house or anything like that?
They did. They got a 1985 Tommy Her card, and they got a lot of pocket lint. That's about the only thing that I didn't have secure. So okay. I think we managed up being okay, Brad.
A week ago Monday, I had Chelsea Rodriguez on. Okay, did you listen to the show?
I did listen to the show. I listened to the show. I can confess to you now, Brad. I listened to the show in real time.
Did you really?
Of course I did. Yeah. I mean, Chelsea's an attraction.
Well, what did you think?
Well, I mean, what did I think of the content? Be more specific. What did I think of what?
The show.
I thought it was fantastic. And I'm so glad that Chelsea was able to come on Monday and give a fresh perspective. And I thought she did a phenomenal job. I can't say, I have to say it exceeded my expectations. I can't say enough about how well she did. Like she has so much personality, and with a good foil like you, it's on display.
Well, I was very impressed with her. First off, she was very conscientious. She was very concerned about that she would come off okay in the show. And I'm not trying to say that I was any part of that, but I tried to, move her along and be kind to her. And I think she did an excellent job. The interesting thing is, and quite honestly, I really enjoyed having her on the air because she's a Dem, and I asked her some tough Dem questions. Matter of fact, I asked her if she was a woman. Did you catch that part of the deal?
I did like that. I thought the only diversion during the show was, I think that, and I say this with all due respect, I think that if I listen to you and Chelsea Rodriguez, I don't need to have Josh Hawley sitting in the cuck chair for 6 minutes being the target of attention. Like, I would rather have just heard you two talk without the presence of Josh Hawley sitting in the room, so to speak. But Brad, I'm being nitpicky. I get your point though. And yeah, of course you ask her tough questions. And if you go back and you listen to even on the Josh Hawley type inquiry that you gave about what is a woman, or do you identify as a woman, Chelsea, I think, gave the progressive / moderate answer to that I think everybody can understand and relate to.
Well, and see, the interesting thing is, and I agree with what you say, because some of these progressive, the Democrats, are just off the chain. You know what I mean? Some of the, like, matter of fact, I'm not going to tip my hand, but part of my top 3 this morning is involving one of them. And you hear the stuff that comes out of their mouth and you go, Are they on this planet? Have they come in from another planet? And
let me interrupt real quick, Brad, because I think the difference between an online progressive and a Chelsea Rodriguez is that Chelsea is a professional who has candidates that face voters. And Chelsea is in the room when her candidates, plural, speak to voters. And she understands that voters are not talking about, her voters are generally not sitting in a South St. Louis Tower Grove coffee shop talking about intersectionality. They're talking about why they're paying more at the grocery store than they did a year ago. And I think that's why Chelsea is so rooted in reality.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, maybe we'll talk a little bit more of that in C Block. Okay, but what we have to do is we have to get into the show this morning, and we have to bring in this guy right here. What's your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And the reason we bring him in because he's going to count us down to the top 3 of John Combest. Every single day of his life, John Combest puts together this incredible website called johncombest.com, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. You know how John's spelled. You know how .com spelled. You got the rest of it. Put it into your browser, and away you go. But what we do is we start off the show because John has so many things every single day, even when he's on vacation, that we have to knock it down to the top 3. And we start off with...
In third place...
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Not only an iconic line from a public service announcement, which according to Wikipedia began in the 1960s and ran through the 1990s, one of the most famous PSAs of all time. And point of fact, also quoted by the Wu-Tang Clan, and probably my favorite Wu-Tang song, Protect Your Neck, off their 36 Chambers album. He said, it's 10 o'clock, bleep. Where the heck your seat at? It's 10 p.m. Where are your children? Well, there were several parents in St. Louis City who couldn't answer that question over the weekend. And this story is brought to us by Colleen Schrappen. You say, John, you and Brad aren't big on urban stories. It doesn't have anything to do with the Westplex. You may be right, but I think it's still an entertaining and informative piece. The headline from Miss Schrappen, 11-year-old, you heard that right, 11-year-old among 24 minors detained by St. Louis police for breaking curfew. If you think back to 2 weekends ago, so not this past weekend, but the one before, there was a spate of violence in St. Louis City, and that was a no-no for everyone. Not just because of the violence and the headaches, but because the NCAA basketball tournament was a week away from coming here. You know, the tournament was here this past weekend. And Kara Spencer, among others, said, whoa, we cannot have this going on a weekend when important people are going to be in town. We got to do something to clean it up. So they being law enforcement, and the city instituted a curfew. Let me get back to Colleen's piece, though. On the first night of an extended curfew, St. Louis police officers detained 23 minors, the youngest of whom was an 11-year-old. The juveniles were taken to the police department's reunification center, where their parents were called, police said. Here's my favorite line of the whole piece. One parent refused to pick up their child. Can you imagine being that kid? That kid's going to have a complex for a while. I'm sure there's a backstory there. 6 of the minors were from the city. The rest were from St. Louis County, according to officers. I'm sure they were Asian kids living in Olivet or Ladue. Less than an hour before the curfew went into effect at 10 p.m. Friday, police spokesperson Mitch McCoy, that's a great cop name, Mitch McCoy, gave a press briefing near a packed Enterprise Center, where Mizzou was squaring off against the University of Miami prior to getting spanked by a superior team. Quote, there's probably more juveniles than we were hoping for. We were hoping that parents would heed that warning. And then, so Brad, I'll just summarize here. 7 people the previous weekend were shot in unrelated incidents stretching from Marine Villa in South City to Baden at the north end, including a 14-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy. None of the shootings were fatal. So I won't get to the rest of the story. Brad, I didn't include this on johncombest.com because there's no mention of state politics or AG Catherine Hanaway or anything like that. But you can find it by going to stltoday.com. And I think that the curfew is something that just makes sense. I can't imagine, unless you were Brad Hildebrand in the 1970s, working as a curb boy at Steak and Shake and driving in late night hours / early morning hours. I can't imagine why a child would be out at that hour. I would love to know the backstory of the 11-year-old that was out past curfew. And I think the curfew is a great idea.
2 things. First off, you brought up my curfew traffic stops. That used to
I had to preempt it before you told the story, Brad.
That used to happen to me at least probably once a week, mainly by the Florissant police, occasionally by the county police. Second thing, how many did you say were from the county?
Well, 23 were arrested in total, and only 6 of the minors were from the city. So my Hazelwood East math tells me that 17 of them were from St. Louis County.
How did they get into the city?
They probably stole a car or bummed a ride. And Brad, you and I grew up in Spanish Lake, so you could just hop on Hall Street and get to the city. You know, it's no big whoop. You just get off at, take the jog over on Adelaide and you're in the city,
Yeah, but John, that's a stretch if you're on your feet. I mean, that's a walk. I mean, like from where?
Yeah, well, Brad, I mean, obviously they're going to have an older hoodlum is going to give them a ride in their Nissan Altima that they got from their Auntie Clarice. I just finna borrow it for a little while. Finna give my friends a ride.
No,
they just got a ride from their friend.
No, the Kia boys got with their stolen Kias. That's how they got
it. It could be the Kia boy. Brad, I wouldn't talk. You're an expert on jamming that USB in there. You know more about that than most of the Kia boys. No, but Brad, I'm sure they just got a ride from Pagedale down to the city and just they heard that there was probably some good stuff to steal, or there were some little hood rats out there twerking. It was warm weather. And
they were all Asian kids, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, they were all Asians from Olivet. Actually, the chess team had an event down there, and they didn't want to go to the Rex statue down there, so they decided, we go downtown, Sushi.
Have you driven? I know you're going.
No, I haven't, Pat. If it's in the city, I haven't driven there.
No, in the county. Have you driven Olive from 270 East, from 170 East?
No, that's a disgusting area. Why?
Well, it's just to the point where it's all Asian now. It used to be, it's interesting, it used to be Jewish. It used to be all the New York Bagelry was there and all the delis and stuff like that. Now it's all Asian stuff.
Yeah, I think the Asians have been in there for quite a while. It's quite an enclave there, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, it's sort of sad because when they built the new Costco, they tore down one of the Asian churches, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, ready for number 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
Up a notch to number 2.
You are a fan, and I don't mean listeners here, I mean you being Brad Hildebrand, are a fan of long-form journalism and deep dives. And we got one of them, or at least a medium dive, via an outlet that we don't spend a lot of time talking about, although we do highlight them once in a while, Spectrum Local News. Their chief in this area is, of course, the vaunted veteran newsman, Greg Palermo. And there's someone on the Spectrum staff named Marissa Jacks. I'm guessing she's from the National Spectrum outlet. Point is, she visited Missouri, Jefferson City to be specific, and she sat down for what ended up being about a 20-minute on-air interview with Missouri Attorney General Catherine Hanaway. I say 20 minutes. They probably spent more than an hour together, but on the video that we end up seeing in the finished product, it's about 20 minutes. I don't want to belabor logistics, though. So Marissa and Catherine sat down and talked about Catherine Hanaway's priorities. I think it's probably the deepest dive that anybody's done with AG Hanaway since, not only since she was having a conversation with Brad Hildebrand on the Brad and John show, but since initially she was appointed to be AG by Governor Kehoe, and she sat down on her very first interview with Scott Fawn of the Missouri Times. Pardon me. But it's a great interview, Brad. I should point out that I only skimmed around. I didn't sit through the whole 20 minutes, but I did skim around. And when I say it's a great interview, it's because Miss Marissa Jacks does a little Brad Hildebrand there. Doesn't just ask the normal questions. And of course, she leads Catherine through conversations about violent crime, conversations about robocalls. You can find that if you go to the video. And frankly, any interviewer would have asked those questions. But Miss Marissa pulls a Brad Hildebrand and says, tell us a little bit about, your childhood. Catherine talks about walking the soybean fields as a kid. In fact, that's why she's such a fan of Roundup Ready crops. You don't have to, you can just spray a little glyphosate over the top, kill those weeds. At least in the 90s, that was working well. And Brad, I put a teaser up on my website today where in the link I just said what Catherine would be doing if she wasn't Attorney General. And I might as well just reveal it for listeners to the BJ show. Brad, if you had to guess, what would Catherine say she would be doing if she wasn't in public service today?
I don't know. Maybe she's an attorney. It has anything to do with her just practicing law? No?
It does not. Well, I mean, in some cases it could. She said if she wasn't doing what she's doing today, she would be a stand-up comedian.
Really?
Yeah, true story. And when you think about it, it's one of those answers that when you hear it and then you step back, you're like, yeah, like Catherine has like a really dry sense of humor. Like, I think anytime you've seen her in an environment in which she's not just straight up answering rote questions and giving rote answers, I think her humor is on display. So I could see that. Yeah. Anyway, what I think is cool about what Spectrum is doing here, they call it IF, which is not like Invisible Friend, like the children's movie, but In Focus. So I don't know if this is a one-off thing and they just brought Marissa Jackson for one Missouri interview and, you know, she's going to Pennsylvania to do the same thing next week. But it's kind of cool. Catherine also walks the reporter around her office too and shows different, you know, knickknacks and artifacts around Catherine's office.
Okay, first off, two things, and I'm not going to take up your time, but I just want to bring this up. It's interesting because of the fact that she is one of my top three, Catherine Hanaway. We'll talk about when you get in my top three. And the other thing is, in the C block, I would like to also talk about her in something that hit me over the weekend that I am going to maybe contact her about. And not that I'm going to mention this to you because of the fact that I don't want to be an embarrassment to you, but I just want to run this by you. So we'll talk about her in B block and then a C block. Is that cool? Remind me.
I love that idea, Brad. And meanwhile, let's get to story number one.
The number one.
I mean, sometimes we figure out what our top three is going to be, and then a late breaking story comes, or at least one pops up on a media website. And that's what happened this morning on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. About an hour ago, Jack Suntrup of the Post-Dispatch posted a piece, and unless I'm mistaken, Jack highlights the first real, deep, meaningful conversations and commentary from LB Eckelkamp on his data center. Now, I could be mistaken. Mr. Eckelkamp could have talked to the folks at the Washington Missourian, Chris Parker, Jeff Folsom, but I don't think he's really gone into detail about why he purchased all this land originally, how long he had it, what he thought he might be doing it. And that's what Jack gets to. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Bank CEO says selling his land for data center will bring, quote, huge benefit to Franklin County. Here's how Jack starts his piece. Among vocal public opposition, a Franklin County businessman is defending a major data center project planned for hundreds of acres his family owns near Interstate 44 at Gray Summit. And Brad, this is, of course, the controversial data center that we've discussed many times on this show. Now, here's what I think. Here's what I think is interesting. Eckelkamp says, I can't think of a better use for the property because of the minimal problems that it causes and the huge benefits that it gives to the area. And Jack notes that last week, a public meeting started on Tuesday at Union High School, and it lasted until Wednesday morning at 4:39 a.m., to be exact. I can't imagine staying up that long listening to public comments. But what I think is cool about what LB says, LB Jr. says here, is that he said that all along, when he and his family purchased these 600 acres, he always knew that this would be developed into something. Now, he says he had no idea, of course, that it would eventually be a data center, but he says they acquired it, they being the family, acquired it about 20 years ago, and it was always going to be developed. So what I think LB is getting at here is, hey, we never planned on just keeping this for a few horses and cattle and keeping it to be a serene environment. We were always going to, let's use a millennial term, we were always going to flip it and make some money. So LB, of course, details here too. I shouldn't say of course, but he goes through and he details that there will always be at least 1,000 feet behind anything going on in the data center and a property line. He says the noise level won't be any more than usual. He talks about the Shaw Nature Reserve and says that from the Shaw Nature Reserve, you won't even be able to see the data center. So anyway, I think this is good because this is good if you're an LB Eckelkamp partisan, I guess, or if you're in favor of data centers, because unless I'm mistaken, we haven't heard a whole lot from LB about the backstory of this. Now, Brad, I know in general, you've given many dissertations about the folks that are NIMBY, not in my backyard, and CAVE, Citizens Against Virtually Everything. And it's fair to say that you're in favor of these data centers. And I'm guessing that the Gray Summit category, that the Gray Summit data center is still in that same category in your mind.
Well, There's a lot of development going in that area. Matter of fact, around and that very exit right there on the north side of 44, they're building I'm trying to think, is it a Circle K? They're building a brand new gas station with like a little mini truck stop thing. It's not going to be like a huge, big truck stop, but there's going to be, you know how hold on a minute. You know, when you travel on the highway, out in the middle of nowhere, if you go to like Pilot and places like that, they have like an area where the cars fill up with gas and then where the big tractor trailers fill up with gas.
Yeah, I get it. Sure.
They've got a place like that. They're building that out there. And the second part of this is this crazy thing with the data center things. I mean, I'm having so much fun. I'll be honest with you, trolling all these people because it's so ridiculous when you talk to these people. There was one last night. This lady came at me. She says, I'm for getting rid of all data centers. And I essentially replied back to her, yeah, well, guess what? No more Facebook, right? Because
yeah, you can't have Facebook without it. What would the boomers do?
Well, but the crazy part of this is that there's so much disinformation out there, and I'll stand by what I said a couple of weeks ago, which I had two of my friends call me out on this. I say a lot of this is Chinese interaction or Chinese propaganda that's been thrown out there because of the fact you listen to the experts, and they will all tell you the future is just like when we went through the thing with the Russians back in the 50s and the 60s with the space race. It's the same thing all over again with AI because I heard a guy over the weekend just giving an excellent dissertation on this. He talked about the country that wins the AI battle is going to be able to, move the country forward, going to be able to do this better, that better, blah, 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 blah. And all these people, it's like, it uses so much water. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, it makes a noise. See, did you know, I shouldn't tell this, but did you know that my Uncle Otto, who I'm not going to say exactly where he lives, but they built a data center near his house. And you know what happened to Uncle Otto?
What happened?
He got ED. And the worst part of the story is after he got ED, my Aunt Mutzi, who we call Tante Mutzi, Tante is German for aunt, so you know that what nationality she is. Tante Mutzi got upset with Uncle Otto because of the fact that, shall we say, he couldn't perform anymore. So, so Tante Mutzi left town and hooked up with a guy, literally and figuratively, Jethro from the Carnival, who runs the Tilt-A-Whirl. And that's how bad data centers are. I mean, that's a perfect example. In my own family.
Not all people, let me interrupt, Brad. I know that we're going to commercial, but let me interrupt. I think their time would be better spent trying to ban yard signs. There's a movement afoot in the last week in my absence. There's been a movement afoot to ban yard signs. And I got to say, it's an impressive movement.
Did you hear anything?
I did. Yeah, Brad. And I can't believe you're putting effort into this radio station. I can't even criticize it, Brad. It's just anytime you put in an incremental amount of effort, I just stand and applaud. And I mean, I'm able, unlike Uncle Otto, I'm able to get up and show appreciation. You get what I'm saying?
That's what she said. Okay, we have to take a break, but it's not going to be our normal break. About a minute 30, John, just a heads up, okay?
I got you.